In this video, I'm going to hopefully, we're going to make a picture like this. A train that looks three-dimensional. Looks like it's popping out of the screen. So, first thing I'm going to do is go and search for a picture of a train. And one of the tricks when searching for a train or working with anything in Photoshop is in Google, I'll go to search tools and I want to find the largest picture I can. I'm going to take this picture here and download it to my computer. Okay, I'm going to launch Photoshop CS2 and I'm going to open up the picture of the train. And the first thing I'm going to do with this, when I open up the train, is I'm going to make multiple copies of the train. And I'm going to work on a very important part of Photoshop, which is called the layers. I'll move the layers front and central so you can see it. The layers are like layers of cellophane. And one of the nice things, we can erase, we can edit, we can muck things up, we can copy and duplicate, and if we don't want something, we can just toss that layer away, and we won't necessarily affect the other parts of the picture. So to make copies, we select the layer, and you can tell it's selected because it's blue, and I press the Control key plus J. So I'm going to make a handful of copies. And another part to get to know layers is when you have the layers, and by the way, if you don't have layers, you go under Window and just put a check mark on layers. Another part of layers that's important is the eyeball. And if I undo the eyeballs, you can not see something. If an eyeball is selected, for example, on layer 1 copy, it's selected, you can see that particular layer. Now, the confusing part for students is I can see layer 1 copy, but if I was to do some work, let me take the eraser, for example, and I'll make a really large eraser, and I'll click on something, and it's actually not going to do anything because that layer is not visible. So I'll make that layer visible, but I'll go back here, and students will do this. The eyeball is on layer 1 copy. And you might think you're working on the eyeballs on layer 1 copy 3, and I'll start erasing, and they say, well, nothing happened. Look at this, nothing's happening. And the reason is because I'm working on a layer called layer 1 copy, which is below this layer. So if I undo the eyeball on it, you can see, oh, there it is erased. So you really have to be careful when you're working with layers that the layer you're working with, the one that's selected, is the one you're working on. And so if I want to work on this layer, I'm seeing this layer. And also because this layer is on top, let me put it below layer 1 copy. The order of the layer is important. So the ones on top are the ones you're going to see the most. So I don't want this one anymore. I'll delete it. And let's get working with, let's say, this first layer. So this is the layer I'm working with. You can see it's selected, and I'm working with that layer. Okay, I want to get rid of the sky. So I use the magic wand tool, and I click on here, and most of the sky is selected. If most of the sky was not selected, for example, when I first did it, I selected and only half the sky was selected. That's something called tolerance. At the top here, you can see tolerance. So the more tolerant it is, the more that it's going to be selected. So it's 16 shades of blue different that it's going. If I select something like 40 shades, now if I select here, it's going to get much more of that blue area. And that's a nice quick way to select things, to get rid of things. I press the delete key on the keyboard, and delete will erase what was selected. In this case, the blue sky. Okay, the next thing I want to delete is I want just the train. So I'm going to use zoom in a bit here, try to get the front of the train best I can. And I want to get rid of, actually maybe that's a little too much. I'm going to zoom in and I'll use the lasso. And I'm going to take the lasso and I'm going to just draw a line. To save time, I'm not going to do a very good job. But really, you should do a better job than this. Well, I'm actually doing a really horrible job. But you'll get the gist in the picture anyhow. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly select this part now. And again, press the delete key. So now what I could do is I could go to the picture, and I'll try to use the eraser, and I'll show you how the eraser's not going to work here. If I go to use the eraser, it's like, well, why is the eraser not working? And that's because it's outside the selection. So I'm going to go to the select menu and select everything in this picture, and then it's going to allow me to erase like so. So I'm going to erase this. Oops, I don't like that. I'll go edit, undo. I need the brush to be a little bit harder, so I'm going to make it a fair bit harder, maybe make the diameter a bit smaller. And now when I go, I can get a better brush to kind of erase this sloppy stuff that I didn't quite get. Okay, now I've got lots more to erase, so let me zoom out. This part here I don't really care so much about. I could try to use the magic wand. And it'll do a fairly good job on some of these things. And in fact, actually, it probably did a good enough job. Let me zoom in and just see how good it was. Yeah, sure, that's probably good enough for this, this activity. I'll use the eraser finally. I'll select everything so I have the eraser. I'm going to make a really large eraser. Eraser. And I'm just going to erase really quick, and maybe even what's the largest I can make this eraser. There, this will be better. Sort of mass erase all this, and I go, oh, got lots more to erase. So there we go, that's pretty good, and I've got just the train. And the reason I do this is I want this train to pop out, not the grass in the background to pop out, just the train. So here's my train, and it's just a train. I've removed the background. But if I want to see the background, if I click the cellophane layer below, what is deleted, and you can tell by the checkerboard background, it really looks like nothing's happened. And that's because this layer is on top, and you can see through it to the next layer, which is that one. Okay, now I'm going to work with the background. So in this layer, what I want to do is make my picture frame. And so to make my picture frame, I'm going to use the marquee box, the rectangle selection tool. And so I'm going to draw a rectangle maybe around this part of the train. And it's going to be small to give the illusion of something popping out. It's going to be small to what the 3D thing that is close is. And the 3D thing that's close is going to appear to get larger. And the large part is going to be over here, which is going to be the background. So right now you say, well, that's just a straight square. It's not smaller and larger. So to make it skewed, and maybe I'll go back here to show you again, you'll see it's small on the side where the train is going to pop out, large to where the distance is, and that gives the illusion that this is popping out. Okay, so let's try that. So I have a marquee that's not small and large. I want the right-hand side to be larger. So I go under Edit, and I go Transform, and I want to skew this transformation. So I'm going to skew the marquee box by grabbing a corner up here and making it large, and grabbing a corner down here and making it large. Now, unfortunately, what it's going to do is it modified, and it doesn't look that bad in this picture, but at most I wouldn't want to do this. It's going to modify this layer. So I just want the selection box to be skewed. So I'm going to press Enter, and the selection box stays selected. You can see the little dashes are rotating around it. And I'm actually going to delete this layer. I've got lots of copies anyhow. And I'll say delete this layer. And now I'm going to apply that selection to a layer that wasn't skewed, but you'll see the selection box still is skewed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and select the inverse, and I'm going to delete the inverse. So now I've got the inverse selected. I delete that background. I only wanted that part of the train. And now I'm going to go back to select inverse again, and you'll see that little three-dimensional inverse is selected. Okay, I'd like to give this a picture frame. I'd like to put a stroke around this. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edit and Stroke. I'm going to put something about 50 pixels based on here. I'm going to select a white frame. I could do a black frame too if I wanted. Sometimes I do a black frame. I'm going to stick with a white frame for this one. Locations on the inside. I'm going to press OK, and it's going to put to the inside of the edge a white frame. Let's zoom in so you can really see that white frame. So it puts a nice white picture frame. So it looks like you're holding a picture at an angle. Then I'm going to put the eyeball, and we'll see the train now, which was cut out, is going to be popped out of that picture. I'm just about done. The last thing I want to do is, oops, I missed, I should take the eraser here and erase that corner. Great. The last thing I want to do is put a gradient fill in this picture. So I'm going to make a new layer by clicking in the bottom here and hitting the new layer button. It's called layer 2. And I could name it and call this back fill. Fill. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a gradient. To do a gradient, I click on this tool here that says Gradient Tool. And I go over here to select the type of gradient, blue to green. Sure, that's fine. You can select all sorts of different things. If I wanted black and white, I could do black to white. I could do all, whatever, purple to here. Change the colors. I can simply select a color. Let's do blue, lighter blue, sure. Okay. And instead of orange, maybe I'll select a very light blue. This would be a dark blue to a light blue, and say something like OK on that. And if I want to add the gradient, I simply Gradient Tools, create type of gradient, tell it where the gradient line is going to go, and it's going to go from dark blue to light blue. Now, that just put that layer over top. That's not what I want. I actually want the layer underneath. So I'm going to go underneath all of the work that I did, and I'm going to drag that layer to the bottom. Before I do, though, I'm just going to delete the background. I don't want the background anymore, and I'll put backfill there, and ta-da! We now have my 3D train that appears to be popping out. And let me just zoom in a bit, and there's a lovely 3D train.